Hey everybody, Brandon here, welcome back to a new video, and today we're going to be covering the final, the 7th game, in my 8th tournament. And I am currently at an even score, and I am playing against Guillermo with the black pieces. This was a very exhausting tournament, and I was ready to have this just be done, because 7 games, that's a lot, to say the least. And it was a very tiring weekend. But okay, let's see what happens in this final game. D4 from white, and as you guys may know, I go for my normal system with bishop g7, g6, and then d6, and then castles. So there's not really much to comment on here. C3, knight b to d7, so I'm trying to prepare a e5 move. And after this, we see knight b to d2, and h6. H6, I guess I'm trying to control the g5 square, though I'm not really too sure otherwise. It doesn't really feel like such a necessary move. I would rather see a move like c6 happen, or even queen to e8 or rook to e8 with the idea of playing e5. But I guess h6 was a precursor to that, so if e5 is played, there's no bishop g5. Bishop to e2. Now we see c5 on the board. c5, again, just trying to make some progress on one side of the board. I would prefer e5 in these positions, usually because you want space on this side of the board as black, as since they have the pawn on d4 and you have the pawn on d6, you're going to want to try to get some kingside space. But c5 is also very reasonable. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. I'm just going to say preference. Nowadays I would prefer playing e5 or preparing e5 instead. We see castles and b6. b6 is very interesting because I think my idea was to take with the b pawn and improve my center, which is okay. More commonly, you will see after taking just to take with the d pawn and try to offer a trade at some point of the queens, as usually you will take less space in these positions, so you want to trade off queens, and the less space actually won't mean anything anymore. But okay, rook c1 and bishop b7. So all my pieces are developed, so that's great. We see queen c2 and rook to c8. So of course, now that they put their queen on this diagonal, this file, you want to oppose that with your rook. And now if I take, then they cannot take with the c pawn because, well, their queen's in the way. So this pawn is now indirectly pinned if we ever remove this pawn off the board, and we can do that by taking. So okay, now we see bishop to d3 and c takes d4. After e takes d4, I played rook to c7. Rook to c7 is okay. I would actually prefer knight to d5 in this position, which does win the bishop pair pretty much immediately. The whole point is after the bishop moves, then knight b4. And we win the bishop pair. Because if they take, then we win the queen for a rook and minor piece. And this should be advantageous to black. In most cases, it will be. Instead, after e takes d4, I played rook c7. And after rook f to e1, now I go for the idea of knight to d5. Bishop g3 and knight to b4. Queen b1 and I take, and now I have the bishop pair. So that's a very nice feature of the position. I was able to trade off a piece. So essentially when we look at this position, even though it looks like I traded off this piece for this piece, which is true, I essentially traded off this piece for this piece because after the moves here, we can see that my knight is now on f6. However, this is still a close position, and if I can't open the position, then the bishop pair won't really matter too much. Bishop h2, rook to e8, trying to play e5 and open the position. Rook c to d1, rook to d7. I'm hoping to play e5, and this is further hopefully preparing the cause. We see queen c2, just getting out of the way of that. But the problem is here, white is covering the e5 square very well, and it's difficult to play e5. So this is unfortunately the wrong idea, and instead I should be treating this somewhat like a Carlsbad, where I haven't played e6 and d5 yet, and the pawns are on h7 and g7, and going for something called a minority attack, where you play b5 and b4 and try to create weaknesses on the side of the board where you have space. And I have space on this side of the board right now with b5 and b4, but I do not realize this until later. And now I'm shuffling, and I have to play d5 as there is threats of knight takes g6. d5, rook to e3, e6, rook d to e1, knight to e4, knight h to f3, and takes, bishop c8, knight to f3, rook b7. Not really sure what I'm doing here. I think now I'm finally going for the minority attack, but after queen c2 and b5, my opponent offered a draw, and I accepted when I had the bishop pair, but I was not happy with this position. I felt like I might actually be worse here. Even though I have the bishop pair, this bishop on c8 is more useless than me at a social gathering. But okay, nonetheless, it is not a position that I wanted to play on, and this was the final game. I was exhausted. I just had another loss that was pretty brutal. I had two brutal losses, not one after another, but within the same tournament, and I just wanted a break. So after this game, I ended the tournament with an even score, and you can actually see my updated rating and the progress chart for my rating over time. And I believe I did take a bit of a break after this tournament because some of these games really bothered me. Some games where I should have converted, or some games where I just missed a lot of silly moves that I shouldn't miss. A whole bunch of this stuff, and this game, it was just nice to just be done and take a break. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next tournament, where hopefully I am refreshed and ready to play. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you then. Have a good one, guys.